I recently covered Noah's Heart, a brand new anime MMORPG from the developers of Dragon Raja, Archosaur Games. They'd released a new trailer, they'd announced their closed beta pre-registration was currently ongoing, and honestly, since anime MMOs are kind of my thing, it's kind of a no-brainer that I'd want to cover it. And while both MRSSTIX and I did apply to the closed beta test, it does turn out that there were limitations imposed that we weren't aware of. On December 21st, the developers announced that they had expanded the maximum number of players allowed to participate in the beta to 10,000, but only the first 10,000 players that logged in would get to participate. And given that I was at my in-laws over the course of the Christmas week, yeah, you bet I missed out on that opportunity. Now, this was the first beta test for Noah's Heart, and well, there were some issues, quite a few issues. Nothing game breaking, but issues where players would repeatedly crash, players were stuck at 99% when attempting to download and update the game, there was immense amounts of lag. Honestly, given they have Dragon Raja, which is a large-scale MMO, you'd think at the very least concerning lag, they would have made an active effort to purchase servers that could have handled 10,000 players logged in concurrently. Regardless, Archosaur seemingly fixed the issues over the course of the first day, and the remainder of the test phase went over without really too many hiccups. Now, one concern that I did see both in the YouTube comment section and over on various different social media platforms was that this game looked eerily reminiscent and far too similar to Genshin Impact, and that more specifically, this game looked like a cheap Genshin clone. And while I am well aware that every open world game with any type of anime aesthetic these days is instantly labeled as a Genshin clone, and as such it was only a matter of time until this game received the same treatment, but Noah's Heart is quite a different game. On the one hand, Noah's Heart is an MMORPG. Genshin Impact is an online RPG, meaning that in Noah you are required to play with and coexist with other players within the world. There is no option for solo play. Genshin has a plethora of different characters that you can recruit. These characters are arguably some of the best looking I've come across in the entire genre. Nevertheless, Noah's Heart doesn't have alternative characters, rather you pick your class from a selection of sword and shield, or dual blades, or bow and polearm. You then proceed to create your character, something that Genshin does not allow for. You can recruit different waifus though, from what I've seen. However, as opposed to being able to actively use them like you would in Tower of Fantasy or in Genshin Impact, the waifus play more of a passive role, buffing and debuffing and providing beneficial support from afar. This does admittedly add additional layers to the combat, as depending on which waifus you bring with you into battle, the course of the encounter could differ substantially. I'm uncertain of how many waifus there are to recruit, how you go about recruiting all of them, or how many you're even limited to equipping at any given time. I'll need to get into the English version of the game to fully test that out. Now, if I were to compare this to any other title, realistically, I would compare this to Dragon Raja. I played Dragon Raja on PC recently, and this game looks like a more polished version of it, graphically anyway. I'd always thought that Archosaur did incredibly well with regards to the style of the game, and I feel as though Noah's Heart is no different. This is built using Unreal Engine 4, like most MMOs built for mobile devices seem to be doing in this day and age. There are points where I look at the game though and think that it looks a little barren, and that's more than fine. They are, after all, still heavily in the process of developing the game, and this was their first smaller scale beta test. I'm hoping, genuinely hoping, that this is not how the game looks when it fully releases. The combat itself actually looked really good and felt pretty good. Movement felt fast, it felt fluid, your actions looked very responsive. The abilities themselves didn't seem overwhelmingly over the top, rather much more tame in scope and scale. But then again, the only combat that I saw was low level combat, so it's difficult to accurately gauge how combat will end up with 30 people spamming AoEs in large scale content. I believe the combat is kind of hybrid. You could use abilities without a target, but some abilities would lock on. I honestly wish I got to participate in this myself, as I would have been capable of delving much deeper into it. But you know what? I feel as though I can more accurately show you how the combat works by utilizing our trusty friend YouTube. Do note though that the gameplay that I do plan on showing is from other YouTubers, so please make sure to check them out and their respective channels if you want to watch the full video and get the full experience. This footage in specific is from Archosaur Games. I will have a link to their channel down in the comment section below, or not the comment, the description below rather. But let's see if we can get a proper look at the combat. Here we go. Like the combat, it definitely looks like it needs some polish. But if you look at the fluidity of the movements of the abilities of the character itself, I can see that the combat actually locks you on to the target. So, but you don't need to directly be next to it to use your abilities. So I guess, as I noted, it's kind of like a hybrid action combat system, but it looks like, at least for some abilities, it does utilize a lock-on system, which is a little disappointing. Let's see if we can get a look at some of the other combat, or if that's the only thing we'll get to witness. I feel like the UI is a little bit cluttered. It feels a little intrusive, I guess. But that looks to be everything we're gonna see with regards to the combat, at least from Archosaur Games. To summarize though, Noah's Heart seems to be a competent MMORPG with a lot of potential, much like Dragon Raja had. The game features a completely open world for players to explore. It has some fluid hybrid combat. There's a functional mount system by air, land, and sea. There are dungeons and raids for players to run. There are guilds for players to join. There are large cities for players to AFK in. There are various different professions you can engage in and level. You can decorate your own house, and most importantly, you can play with hundreds if not thousands of other players, because this is an MMORPG. And I know what all of you guys are thinking right now. STIX, is this only for mobile devices? STIX, is this even coming out in 2022? And you know what? Even beyond that, STIX, is this game even coming out in English? And yeah, it is currently unconfirmed as of right now what platform specifically this will be released on. Dragon Raja, Archosaur Games' other MMORPG, does happen to be cross-platform between PC and mobile devices, so it does stand to reason that they would want to take the same route with Noah's Heart. There is no confirmed release date though, as of once again December 2021. It is very likely to be releasing in 2022, given that we're already witnessing the game's first closed beta test. Will it be in English as well though? Probably. Dragon Raja was, and the developer looks like they want to cater to as many players as possible. Now, Noah's Heart, I think isn't necessarily going to be the next big MMORPG. I don't really think it's going to be a big MMORPG at all, but I do feel like it has the potential to be a solid cross-platform MMO one day. It might not, but I mean, you know what? Let's not disregard it or its potential before we've given it the chance to actually wow us or to ultimately let us down.